Anyway, so you have a choice. You can come into that tent and be surrounded by people with your head down, looking down the ground, feeling sorry for yourself. Or like we've always talked, and it's who I surround myself with, people like you, people like my wife, people like my family, and friends. You have to come into it with a positive attitude. And why not the hell have some fun while you're at it?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the One More Jump podcast. This is our third episode, and we have with us today a first-class savage with us. He is a 5-time Ironman distance finisher. He's an Ironman 5 times, 5-time 100-mile finisher, 100-mile ultramarathon finisher. He's finished 6 other ultra marathons that are below the 100-mile distance. He's lost count of how many marathons he's done. He's the head cross country and track coach at Plainfield South High School. He's a PE teacher. He's a family man. He's one of the greatest examples that I can think of a person who demands the most out of himself, and it's one of the most influential people in my life. You run into people sometimes who are outside of your family that have a huge impact on your life, and this man is one of those people for me, possibly maybe one of the only people for me that has had an impact as much as his has been on my life. I am talking about Jason Crowe, aka the Birdman, aka your worst nightmare. Coach Crowe, what's going on, man? Aka Coach Crowe. So what's going on? How we doing?
We're doing fantastic. Just enjoying another beautiful day here. Hey, thank you so much for having me on, Jake. Thanks for having me on, Josh. It's an honor. It's truly an honor, and I love just seeing you guys grow and do more fantastic things that you have passions for. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate it, and it's obviously it's an honor to have you. But before we go any further, I feel like I'm not dressed for the occasion, so I gotta get something on here so I feel a little bit better.
I was gonna say,
hey, baby, here we go.
I got mine on the
Hold
way.
up, I gotta turn
Luke's
around
picking
here.
mine up. Oh man.
Wow.
Plainfield South Letterman's jacket.
That's a heck of a jacket.
If you're not watching on YouTube, we got the Letterman jacket out. Coach Crowe came into Plainfield South my senior year in high school. Okay, so take that and think about that for a second. One track season this man had in my life and in my friends' lives. One track season, that's how much of an impact he had. And he's coached us from in track, but then he's been a coach of us in life too from that point on. And we just I wanted to start off with a little something because I introduced you as a first-class savage. What are your thoughts on that statement?
I don't know who you're talking about personally, but I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I refer to myself as a savage, but I do enjoy a few of those activities that we indulge on as far endurance races that I do love. So I guess that's where the savage comes from. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's get a little background on that then. Okay. So paint the picture. I'm in a tent at the Indiana Trail 100 miler. Okay. I'm in a tent. I'm with your wife, your 2 kids, and we're watching a radar, and the radar starts off with being a little bit red, and then it turns to a lot red, and then it turns to a dark red, and then it turns to a purple. And a purple, if you look at the little thing on the side of the radar, is bad news. It's bad news. So you're about 70 miles into the race at that time. I'm pretty sure it was 70 miles because that's whenever I was going to jump in with you and help you out. And we were looking at each other like, is this the last that we're going to see of the bird? Is this it? Is this all she wrote? I mean, lightning is cracking, lighting the sky up. The thunder was so loud. And then all of a sudden, woo! You bust into that tent like you had just gotten back from Disneyland. I was like, who? And everyone kind of looked at each other like, who the heck is this guy? It's at 70 miles in a race. So where does that come from? Where do you think that, like, I think just you're so excited about putting yourself in these situations. You get so pumped up by it. So where does that come from? Do you think?
I don't know. I think, I will say this, you know what, the moment, I do remember the moment that you're talking about, and it was a lot of fun. Let me backtrack a little bit since we got time. You have a choice to come into a situation like that where it seemed like the sky was falling. Honestly, this storm was brutal. They've talked about how they should have canceled the race and any other races would have been canceled, but they kept it going, simply probably because they don't know where the hell everybody's at out there. Anyway, so you have a choice. You can come into that tent and be surrounded by people with your head down, looking down the ground, feeling sorry for yourself. Or like we've always talked, and it's who I surround myself with, people like you, people like my wife, people like my family, and friends. You have to come into it with a positive attitude. And why not the hell have some fun while you're at it? So that was just really adrenaline right there, coming in, seeing you. And I was waiting to get into the race and have you with me and pace me through the last part of it. It's also excitement seeing my children, because what time of the night was it?
Oh, it was
1, 2 in the morning. I don't know. I don't
probably
know.
probably 2 a.m.
Yeah, and my little children are there with my wife, and the support unit that I have with me, and I'll talk about them later, but they're just fantastic. But no, it's just a matter of having fun, making something that's a negative into something positive, and it's your choice.
Right. So like, if you've ran any kind of race, obviously, I guess, when you see a finish line, or more important, like if you're in an ultra marathon, more importantly, if you see that aid station, it's like you get a surge of adrenaline and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. Okay, we're here. So you get that surge of adrenaline. Okay, you see the lights, you hear the music, there's food, there's chicken soup, you see your family's there, your friends are there. But 6 miles before that, none of that's there. Okay.
Right. That's
the
part
there.
I struggle with. The 6
Right.
miles out. Where you're like, the grass is greener on the other side. It's in sight, one way or another, but holy cow, that's a long 6 miles. That's why I haven't ventured into ultras ultimately.
So where's your head at when in that point in the race, you're about an hour at least away from the aid station, and you're in the middle of the woods, and that you're in a really sticky situation. So I guess my question is, it's easy to be, for that adrenaline, like you said, it was like an adrenaline rush at the aid station.
Right.
How do you propel yourself through the time where you're not at the aid station, where you're by yourself and you're in that sticky situation?
Well, that's truly, and you and I, once again, we've talked about it because we've shared these times, these races. It's truly the best part of it. because there's highs that you experience where everybody's, you know, hooping and hollering. And then there's the lows, and the lows I love. I know that sounds weird and everything, but I enjoy the challenge of that, and the mental aspect of it is that even though it's only 6 miles, it may be an hour, maybe even longer if you're moving slow, like we were through that day through the mud, because it was just mud.
Oof, yeah.
The course was pretty crazy, but that's where you just got to put life into perspective, and that just gives you time with yourself. And I truly enjoy. Now, I'm not saying I want to do it every day, but
right.
I truly enjoy having that moment where you're up against failure, where you're up against, you know, completely, you know, being unsuccessful.
Right. You have talked about that time.
Yeah.
Those types of times, many times with me, and you have a specific name for it. What do you call that place?
Oh
man. You've used it with me a few times. You've referred to it as the dark place.
Yeah, the dark side. Yeah, the dark place. Yeah, you just got to go there. You got to go there, because your life's not incomplete, in my opinion, until you experience that and truly go there. You know,
right.
So.
For sure. So what are some things like, what are some takeaways what do you learn in that space whenever you've pushed your body to that limit? What do you learn? Like what are some things that you've taken away from spots and times like that?
Who you are, you know, and it's not for everybody. And what we experienced there in that moment during a race, maybe somebody else's challenge in a textbook, maybe somebody else's challenge in their profession and their job, and maybe a moment in their own personal life. But for us in that moment, it's really to find out who you are and if you're a quitter, you know. And for me, I love challenging myself physically, intellectually. You know, I'm not a genius. I'm not smart like my wife, because she is smart. But for me, I find my personal challenges within a physical ability. And when it comes down to is that you just sometimes in a race like that, especially in the mud, you're going slow and you got to forget about the time, except for the cutoff we got to hit. Right. You just look down at your foot and your feet and you say, just go one more step, and then another, and then another, and another. And you just keep taking one more step in a forward direction. And that's a metaphor that we apply to life.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely, I mean, that one more step and taking that and living in that moment, you really explained it well to me one time. We were doing a longer run for me, which was at the time, it was like a 10-mile run, which, you know, for me was really long at the time. Being a ex-pole vaulter, you know, that was a big step for me. And I asked you kind of similar questions while we were running, like, why do you do this and things like that. And you had mentioned that time slows down when you're in a spot like that. And that really kind of hit home with me, because you said, you know, I'm starting to get older and I feel like my life is flying past me right now. Like, I feel like it's flying past me. And then you had mentioned that, but whenever you're so tired and you've been up for 24 hours and your feet are swollen and your knees are swollen and you're hungry and you're malnourished and you're dehydrated and you feel like death, time slows down a whole lot in those moments, and it feels like it almost stops. It almost feels like you have the ability to stop time, because you're in so much, you know, you're suffering so much. And I found that to be kind of fascinating, that view on that. So is that something that you think about when you're on these long runs?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, because life is, I mean, I just turned 47 a couple weeks ago, and I still feel like I'm 20, you know. I still feel like I just graduated from high school a few years ago, just like you know, even though it's not just like you.
Dude, it's not just like me now. Yeah. Even Josh. Right, Josh. I mean, how many years out of school are you, Josh?
10, 11, 29.
You're 11 years out of high school?
Yeah,
You're 29?
Hey.
Two brothers.
What the
Yes.
heck? You're going to turn 30 this year?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I need to run an ultra. Speaking of running ultras, we all three signed up for one in October.
Yes.
That Indiana Trail 100. Josh, I've done a couple. I've done two.
Yeah.
And then I've paced Crowe for like 30 plus miles on two different occasions.
Yeah.
2 different occasions. So I'm counting those as ultras too.
Yeah.
What are you? So you kind of similar to me. I went and I got into it, and I called Crowe and I said, hey, what do I? Should I just get in a 50K? And Crowe was like, oh my gosh, come on. 50K is, what is that, like 31 miles or something?
Yeah, 31 miles.
31 miles. And he was like,
come on, man.
Yeah, you might as well just do a marathon. He was like,
you're
going to do it.
When you do a marathon, you do a 50K, you do an ultra.
For sure.
You go from the car.
Yep.
Right.
It's true. It's true. I remember I ran the Twin Cities marathon a couple years ago, and the waiting around, the walking around, we walked around Minneapolis beforehand, and we're walking from Minneapolis to St. Paul and this, and I'm like, we covered 35, 40 miles today. That was like, but you don't factor that in, but we ran the whole marathon distance. That probably would have equated for a decent ultra time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So Josh has felt an immense amount of pain before. He's pushed his body very, very hard, but
in different ways.
And so I guess, he's going to be entering into the dark place on the 100, as am I, for my first time doing 100.
Right.
What is the difference between a marathon and like what I've done and that 100-mile distance?
More time and distance.
All right, moving on.
Seriously. Hey, no, seriously. I got something good to say. Hold on. No, here's the thing, because I've watched you guys, like I said, since I met you guys back in 05, 06, right? And then I saw Josh and then Luke, and you guys have all gone there. That's the thing. And it really is. It's just more time and distance. Let's keep it simple here, because what you guys have done, all right, and I gotta say, like I said, I'm not even in your category, both of you, okay?
Oh my
with
God.
What you guys have done, stop. With what you guys have done with pole vaulting, with your family and stuff, is just unreal. And that there's a moment, and it's just maybe a few seconds, maybe a few minutes in a pole vault competition. Maybe it goes on, because I've seen those things last a couple hours sometimes. But maybe there's those few moments in the competition where you step there. And I know you've stepped to it in your training, because I know you guys are you talk about savages, your family when you guys are the pole vaulting savages, you guys are just relentless when it comes to what you do to be the best. So
thank you.
Well, it's really just extending that in time and distance. And that's what you're going to enjoy about it. You truly will.
Right.
I think that one thing I wanted to expand on with that is, like, I have gone to that place, but it's a totally different place. It's an anaerobic kind of, fight or flight type of place, rather than an endurance aerobic, deep, dark depths of your soul type of place. And I mean, if you're in a competition, a pole vault competition, and you have to make, a jump on your third attempt with the crosswind, gripping at the end of your biggest pole in your bag, you're in a really unsafe environment. And I feel like you do have to get to a place where the risk is so high for your safety and for coming out on top in the competition that there is a version of that you tap into where it's like, I have to be so focused in the zone and committed to this. Whereas your commitment might be one foot in front of the other. Our commitment is like, if I go halfway on this jump, I get seriously hurt, like seriously hurt, broken bones, really, really bad. Whereas if you're, 70 miles into an ultra, it is, from what I understand and what I've heard, it is a one foot in front of the other type of feeling. So it's going to be interesting to be on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, but get to experience such a deep, I guess, dark time, as Coach Crowe calls it.
The dark place.
The dark place.
I think that's totally, I think Josh is right. It's just a different type of like my experience in an ultra is like you get up to a certain pain level and then it just stops getting more painful, and then you just have to deal with the pain level that you're at. And the problem, the hard part about it for me with my ultras was that you get to that really high pain level where it's like, wow, this really hurts and I'm really tired and I still have about 10 more hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it can kind of grab your soul and kind of take your soul from you, where if you think along the lines of, okay, I'm on the starting line. All right, we'll see you guys in 28 hours, 24 hours, whatever. It's like, hold on, what? I'm really going to be moving for that long? So that brings me to another point that Josh and I were talking about. So, but with the 100 miles, so obviously it's longer distance for sure. It's a longer time for sure. But there are some logistical things that you have to come up against. What are some logistical things that are different from, let's say, a marathon to an ultra marathon?
Well, you got to include nutrition, because you need your fuel. That's something I talk about with the athletes I coach, and they talk about their daily nutrition. You have to make sure you're fueling your body the entire time. Otherwise, it will shut down. Some people can go out and run a marathon with just a little bit of water, with a good breakfast, and they can just push through it. Nowadays they have electrolyte drinks and all the different nutrition drinks that they take along the way. But even there's some great runners out there that hardly take anything during a marathon. Whereas you need to perfect your nutrition. I shouldn't say perfect, but you need to go through trial and error, and it's still up in the air of how it's going to react to you, as far as taking in your fuel. Also, you got to take in accountability your feet. Your feet could get pretty mangled. As we know, through all the aches and pains and the hardships of doing one of those, it could be difficult if your feet end up blistering and your skin's peeling away and you start bleeding, on your feet. So you got to take care of your feet. So you got to have the right kind of socks. You got to have the right kind of anti-chafe. I'll throw a plug out there for Squirrel Nut Butter is amazing.
Hey, no, I got that on my kitchen.
Is that a joke?
Kitchen sink, my bathroom sink right now. It's a necessity for anything 10 miles or over for me.
Yeah. And chafing, if you were talking about blisters, that stuff's brutal too. So all that stuff, can come into play. So you got to plan out to make sure that if you do get wet with your feet, because, across streams and creeks, your feet will get wet. You got to make sure to the next aid station, you're drying off, you're changing your socks, possibly even changing your shoes. You gotta treat your feet like they're really, really important during a race like that.
For sure. There is one thing that I feel like is being left out, and that is the big monkey in the room on the 100-miler, which is sleep. And like you've always told me, you've done a couple ultras, but you've never gone through the night. And I feel like even just crewing for you, even on the ones that I've crewed for you, it's hard for me to stay awake, and I'm not even out there, participating, so is that something you can train for? Or is that just kind of nut up or shut up type of thing?
Yeah, I think you just do it. You could train for it, but I've pulled all-nighters and you've pulled all-nighters, and it's just about getting out there and once again, staying awake. The caffeine does help. You don't want to get crazy with caffeine. I love coffee. So a cup of coffee during the night is fantastic. You've taken like 5-hour energies. It helps a little bit. Once again, you don't want to overdo it, that stuff.
Right.
Maybe a Red Bull. I'm not saying a whole can of Red Bull, but you see a lot of endurance athletes taking a little bit of Red Bull, just like I said, just a little bit.
I don't know, because I've seen you take down a pretty sizable amount of caffeine during these.
Are you doing it at the beginning though? Because I've heard mixed responses where, Brad, for instance, the guy who's going to help me at the Indiana Trail, he's like, we're not going to be taking caffeine till later on.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't. I'll have my cup of coffee in the morning before the race starts, just because I love coffee and I'll have a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I wait till later, till the evening.
Got it. So you're not pounding, energy drinks every 6 miles or 8 miles during the race.
No need to. You want to keep your heart rate down.
So what kind of preparation? I mean, I guess to Jake and I, because I think that this episode for sure is going to have a theme of, well, me and Jake getting something out of this in terms of preparation for that race. What are some big bullet points we should be prepared about? Like you mentioned, shoes and socks. Like, I am going to be relying on my buddy Brad to help me out with a lot of that. But like, how many pairs of shoes? How many pairs of socks? What are some big kind of things we should be watching out for?
I don't think you could bring enough. All depending on the weather and the day and the situation. Now the Indiana Trail course. Obviously it's not like anything out west or even out in the mountains. So we're pretty lucky there. But we can see a lot of mud on the trails. So in the past, I've gone to a race like that and I have 7 different pairs of shoes, and I'm not saying they're all brand new. They're just older shoes that if I have to go to, I can use them. I'll have socks, probably up to about 10 pairs of socks, with powder already in them. I use, I think it's 2 Toms. Right, this is a good note. 2 Toms makes a really good blister shield powder.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah,
Jake's used that before too.
Yeah, so I'll use that. I'll put that in all my socks, ahead of time, so I don't have to worry about that at an aid station.
Interesting.
Once again, my crew, which is obviously friends like you guys, and then it's always Jane, my wife, and the kids. They're always there, and they're fantastic. They got, like I said, Vincent. Their support is just awesome. But they have all that stuff ready for me. They have a dry pair of shoes ready for me. They'll have the socks with already the blister shield powder in the socks. I even put a little bit of powder in the shoe and stuff. Like I said, just does a great job against moisture.
For sure.
Well, one thing, my wife, she's a podiatric surgeon, and she blisters up bad on her feet. I blister up pretty bad on my feet, but she uses this. I got to ask her, I'll maybe, throw it in the notes on this or something on this episode. It's like an ointment. It's kind of like a anti-chafing, but it's not in a bar form. It's an actual skincare product. And I've been getting some bad blisters on my big toes on both sides. And I put that on the other day and it felt like I was batting or rocking 100% fresh feet. Like it was amazing. I had never experienced anything like it before. And she's like, yeah, I swear by this stuff. I got to find the name of that. But I was wondering, like, have you ever tried anything like that versus the powder? I've personally never even heard of using powder.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The powder I just put in shoes. Like I said, but the closest thing I've done to that, I mean, back in the day, I used to use the Body Glide, and then, like I said, squirrel nut butter. Now, you can get it in a little tube where you can pull it out with your finger and put it on, and apply it, or you could use like the deodorant stick of it. That I've applied that. But no, whatever works. That's the thing. If you found something that worked good for you, go with it.
I'll go ahead and chime in on my thing, because both of you guys wear narrow-toed shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I switched to a wide toe box shoe. When was that, Crowe? 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
And my first ultra, I ran in a narrow-toed shoe. It was like a Hoka. It was whatever Hoka trail runner was out at the time. First ultra was in that. Toes destroyed. Lost like 4 toenails. just huge, gigantic quarter-sized blisters all over my feet. It was really, really wet. Remember that race was really wet. It rained for half the day. But I switched to an Ultra shoe, and then I switched to a Topo shoe now, Topo Athletic, and it's got a foot-shaped toe box, so then your toes can splay out and they're not crammed, into that little space. And obviously, the more crammed together you are, the more friction you're going to create, with your toes rubbing together, and then your toes rubbing against your shoe. Last Ultra that we did, we had to go through creeks, and we were soaking wet the whole time. Not one foot issue, and then I also wear toe socks. Toe socks are clutch too. Toe socks are very clutch, I think.
I run in the Topo TerraVenture 2s for anything on the trail off the road. So, and cool. I know that feeling. It's running those as often as I can. And I actually like those shoes a lot, but I bought a couple Topo road shoes. Could not stand them. For whatever reason, I think it's because they don't have the big hard plastic or rubber plate on the bottom, and I was just so used to that support. Yeah. And then I switched to ONS, ON. It's for road running. Rich Roll's big on the ONS, and Johnny Crane, who's a ex or a North Central alum, is sponsored by them, and absolutely love them for road running. But it's weird because you go from narrow road running shoes to trail, splayed out toe shoes.
Or you guys could just switch to sandals like I run in the summertime. No. Crow's like, no, that's not happening. All right, let's switch gears here, because I feel like we could talk this technical stuff to death. But one thing that I mentioned in the beginning is you are a track and field coach at Plainfield South High School. You're head track and field boys coach and head cross country boys coach. And you have always said, you're a person who walks their talk, and it's really obvious, and it's cool. Anybody who has had you, has been under your tutelage knows that is who you get. You get somebody who talks the talk, but also walks the walk with everything. And I thought that I would kind of share a story from whenever we were in high school to kind of explain what I mean by Crowe, walking his walk. My senior year, we were at the conference championship. Do you remember this?
Yes, sir.
We were at the conference championship, and we were going against Josh's school, because we both went to different high schools. The boundaries changed or whatnot. And we were down, it was down to the 4x4 between us and the other school, Josh's school. And whoever, if they won the 4x4, then they won the conference championship. And if we won, then we won the conference championship. And so they're going around and they're running, and it was a fun atmosphere to be in. And one person from, if I'm remembering it correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, one person from Josh's team stepped down in front of the track and kind of disrupted one of our runners in the 4x4. Is that right?
It was, if I remember correctly, it was a runner from another team that wasn't even you, or wasn't either Plainfield.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So it was a runner from another team that stepped out in front.
Yes.
From what I remember, it was like a brother it was like a brother of one of it was like a manager type role for another team or something. I don't even think he was participating in the track meet and shouldn't have even been on the track at all, if I remember right.
Right. So
it was completely after our team. And can we say the school? Can we say Josh?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't. Anyway, so it was Plainfield Central already finished, and then we came in second right behind them. So the interference had nothing to do with the outcome of the race or the meet.
Right.
It was after the celebration.
Right. So then what happened, though, is, we were like, oh man, we won. There was a technicality. They got disqualified. I think they got disqualified, and then we're like, we just won the conference championship, and that was our goal. It was my senior year. We were pumped up about it, and then you brought over that trophy, and we were all cheering, and you just yelled no. And I was like, oh no, what do you mean no? What does no mean? And he was like, Plainfield South does not win off of technicalities. And I was like, oh man. That was whenever I realized that you were the real deal. I realized that you did not, you were part of you were in a different universe from other people that I had met and who had coached me before, and I was like, okay, so you legitimately just won the conference championship. If you're going by technical rules, you won the conference championship your first year coaching. And then you said Plainfield South does not win on technicalities. And you took that trophy, you gave it to the captains, and you made us walk it back over to Central and say, that's it. We don't want it. We don't want it. Central, we're not going to win like that.
Hey, we did
it. And they earned it. And they earned it.
Yeah, right.
They earned
right.
it. They beat us fair and square. They beat us fair and square.
So what were you thinking in that moment? Like, how did you come to that decision?
Well, you don't want things handed to you. And I just didn't. I felt like it was tarnished, even though we had a coaches meeting and they gave it to us and everything. And you don't want to, it's just a piece of metal. It's just a piece of wood. Right. It's at the end of the day, and you guys would have realized this later, and you do realize it, is that there's no meaning to that. If anything, you stole it from those other kids, and I'm not saying we stole it, literally stole it, but it's just, you have to earn it. You have to earn it, otherwise it doesn't mean anything. And sure, some official can give us the championship on the technicality on something that had nothing to do with the end result of that race. But at the end of the day, it comes down, did you earn it? And that's when it truly means something, if you earn it. So what that became there, I just felt it in my conscience, and you guys did too, was that it wasn't ours. It wasn't ours. And I hate losing. I hate it.
Oh, I know.
I'll tell that to anybody. I don't hate people. I don't hate religions. I don't hate cultures. I believe in love and being fair and respectful to all. But there's one thing in life that I absolutely hate, is losing. I just, and I don't, I don't know, but
I don't hate people. But, I don't hate religion.
no, I think you respect and love everybody.
True.
On this earth.
I like that perspective.
But when it comes to winning and losing, as long as you do it the right way, and earn it, you win.
So where is that developed? Where is that developed? That's developed somewhere, in your childhood, yeah. Or maybe there's a person in your life that helped you develop that. Where's that from?
My dad.
Your dad? 100%, man. Well, I think this is a good story to kind of go into. At the Indiana Trail, the year before, we had that crazy lightning storm and everything. The year before, you didn't have a race that was, your best race in your life. So do you want to go into that story at all, or?
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. No, it's who we are. So you want me to talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about it.
Yeah, so the year before the Indiana Trail, we talk about failures in life and losing, and we were at the Indiana Trail, and yeah, it's my one DNF in a 100-miler. Actually, might be my one DNF in any race, period.
And a DNF is a did not finish.
Finish, right. So anyway, it's just tough extremes, of a 100-miler. It was raining, it was cold. I don't think it was raining. I take that back. It was raining earlier in the day, but it was cold, and I'm right around mile 62, 62 miles in, and my left Achilles was really hurting, you know. So, and you have those dark moments of a race where you do want to quit. You do have those moments, even in a marathon too, and even a 5K. There's times you're like, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
What is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? I could be home on the couch right now, relaxing and you know, and just chilling out. And why am I doing this? And then you hear that talk too much through your mind, and you start believing it. And that's where you got to shut it off. But that day I didn't shut it off. That day I failed. You know, I came to mile 62 and I was going through a lot of pain, and I broke down and I just said, I'm done. I'm done. I'm gonna drop out of the race. And I know Jane was surprised, and the other people that were around me were surprised, but I quit. And here's the thing. This is what Jake and I were talking about. Was so I go and I drop out of the race, and I have my crying moment because I'm an emotional person, you know. So, you know, I feel sorry for myself and blah blah blah, and which isn't good. You know, you're not supposed to feel sorry for yourself. But so I get on the phone because my parents, growing up, were at all my races, you know, and and my dad always had a special bond with me, with racing. You know, don't get me wrong, I was never that good. Everybody thinks I'm fast. I'm not. But I did my first marathon when I was 14 years old, and out in Columbus, Ohio. And I just backstep real quick. My dad was there with the last mile of that marathon with me. They were shutting down the race. It was in Columbus, Ohio. I'm backtracking here, but you got to hear the story. So there's about a mile left in the race. I'm walking, you know, 14 years old. They're shutting down the race. They're taking down all the banners and everything, and roads are opening up, and I'm on the sidewalk, and even the bus tried to pick me up, you know, say, you know, pick up, you know, the last runners and everything. And I refused to get on it. And then my dad, make a long story short, my dad was there for the last mile to make sure I got to the finish line. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, so that was when I was 14. So then, all right, back to the Indiana Trail race. Okay, back to present time of the Indiana Trail race. I dropped out of the race in mile 62. I go to call my mom. Because her and my dad were, you know, back at home because they're 80 years old now. My mom is over 80. My dad was almost 80. Back at home, and I said, hey, you know what, Mom, I dropped out of the race, but I'm okay, and this and that. And she, you know, she goes, okay, well, I just want to let you know, I didn't want to bother you before the race started, but your father had a stroke, and he's in the hospital, and he's in intensive care. And right then and there, I realized that just because I was experiencing some discomfort, just because I was tired, just because I experienced some physical pain, that I actually freaking had the nerve to quit. And that was hard. That man was sitting in a hospital bed fighting for his life after a stroke. And here I am out running on a bunch of trails, having a good time. And I quit because of the discomfort and a little bit of pain, and never again. So that's what you wanted to hear, you know, and that's what, you know, those moments in life, you learn a lot about yourself. And so that's why I took the bib number from that race and I wrote DNF on it and I put it next to my bed. And I know it's something that, you know, it's kind of silly and everything, but I looked at it every day. And then the next year we went back, Jake. And we finished.
I remember coming in. I mean, you had gone through so much during that race that you're talking about. The following year that you finished, the mud was 6 inches deep. I remember you sliding and slamming your trekking poles into the ground, just so mad and just frustrated. And I was like, man, come on. We got like 5 miles left. Come on. You got this, you're almost there. And we start going and then we came over the top of this hill and you could start to hear the music and you could start to hear the crowd. And I remember going and finally seeing that finish line, and you were like, let's go, man, let's go finish. And I said, you need to cross that line with your dad. And you handed me your stuff and just went and just kind of finished that thing that you had started with your dad. And that was a really cool moment in my life. That was cool to watch, man. And if you would have never finished, if you would have finished that first year, you would have never had that moment. And you would have never shared that moment with somebody else like me and somebody and like your wife and your kids. Your kids got to see that. Your kids got to see their dad fall down. They have to. If their kids don't see their dad fall down and get back up, then what the heck are you even there for?
Right.
You have to set that example, and you set that example. So you say before we started the podcast, you were like, I was like, how many 100 milers have you finished? And you said 5. And then I was like, and then there was the other one. And you were like, yeah, the failure. It's not a failure. It really isn't. And I know that is kind of cliche and like, oh, you're just trying to see the glass half full. No, I'm not. It's not a failure. It's just, that's what it is, man. It's not a failure. You inspired so many people that day with that kind of culmination of looking at that DNF written on your bib and grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding when you didn't want to, when it's ice cold outside, when it's raining outside. And then that culmination on that day of you finishing affected so many more people than you know. So there's no way that that's a failure. Absolutely no way that that's a failure. And that was a cool story, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that that's part of your personal life, and your dad passing was a hard time for you, and we've talked about it on runs and things like that. And I appreciate you being vulnerable like that. That was really, really something special. I'm gonna jump to a more happy thing now.
Segue.
Okay, that's like that's
what are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
I mean, real quick though. Like I said, just to put a lighter moment. My father, had 80 great years. So
yeah.
We celebrate his life. We celebrate his life, and then, that's all about PMA, positive mental attitude. So
100%.
I wanted to pick at one thing really quick, and it might be a quick answer, it might be a long answer, but Jake had mentioned that it's not a failure, regardless whether you see it as a failure or not. Like, one thing I've noticed about you and about a lot of people who are able to experience these ultras and this high level of athleticism, and even high level, I'm in sales, right? This high level sales environment. Like, we have this phrase called, win fast, lose fast. And that lose fast and overcoming that failure is so important to have success. And I feel like, it probably didn't take you, I would assume, very long to realize, like, okay, in my eyes, that may have been a failure. I didn't do it, but guess what? Like, I'm over it and I have to start moving forward. And I think that that's a common theme with a lot of high level athletics, where it's like, didn't perform well. Am I going to sit here and think about it for weeks or months or years? Olympics is delayed. Should I dwell on that for 4 months, or should I just like get going again? You know what I mean? What do you got to say about that?
yeah, you have to get going, and because how you going to live your life, you're going to experience those, but even right now, just with what's going on with the world right now, with competition being suspended and everything, and the athletes I'm coaching, the key thing I've been reiterating to a lot of them is that we're lucky because you could just get out and you could go run. You can go out and test yourself and race a mile wherever you're at, so you can mope around and sit around, or you can go out the door and get after it, so that's just the thing. Sun rises the next day. That's the
for sure. Yeah.
That's
and I guess that is a good point that, as a runner, I think that's the thing, even just as a recreational runner, I think that as you get older, running becomes very appealing because of the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to, you don't have to drive anywhere. You can walk out your front door and go. And I think that is something that is very appealing to running, like, because if you're involved in, and I'm not knocking any of these activities, some of these recreational activities to fitness activities, such as like CrossFit, let's take CrossFit for example. During this time, your CrossFit gym's closed. And are you going to drop $2,000 to get all that equipment into your house? Probably not. Like, that's where running is such an awesome pastime for people who, adults who are looking for an opportunity to get fit, and not even running, walking, man.
Yeah.
Walking, going out and walking is incredible. And I think it could be encouraging to people who are like, well, I don't know what to do during coronavirus. Like, I can't do anything, You can walk, there's so many people out doing that now. And I think it's really, really an awesome thing. And I hope it keeps up whenever this is all over. But like, as far as a pole vaulter goes, it's difficult. And your runners, your cross guys that you're coaching right now, cross country guys that you're coaching right now, it's easy to get out and run, but as far as like what I deal with at Rise is, it's difficult because you don't get to go and do the act of pole vaulting, during this time. You don't get to go and do that. And that is difficult to deal with. But I mean, that's a whole different other thing. But anyway, I wanted to talk about a steps challenge that you did. I think this is the greatest example of how you take things to the nth degree, to where you you take things beyond what it's supposed to be. Okay. And you see his face. Look at his face. He's got that hard face. He's like, no, I don't mess around. It comes back to, he hates losing. Okay,
I was gonna say that he doesn't like to lose, so he will go to the extreme.
He might be willing to die. He might be willing to die to win a steps challenge. Okay, so he had a steps challenge paint the picture for the steps challenge, and then I have a quote that you said to me on a run that I am going to hit you with at the end. Go ahead.
All right, so it's like a couple years ago, the District 202 started this wonderful steps challenge where they had people from all over, and you sign up, and from the entire district. So you're talking a lot of schools.
This is the school district did this?
Yeah,
sponsored it?
Yeah. So we all get online. We all have like this leaderboard, okay? So it's 6 weeks long. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And Plainfield South had a team of faculty, so I'm like, yeah, I'll jump in and I'll contribute to it. Anyway, so it's 6 weeks long, and it starts right before spring break. So at the beginning, didn't even I said, okay, I'll pay attention. I'll put my watch on, counts my steps, and it automatically syncs in at the end of the day, which is kind of cool because it was a Garmin and has that technology. So I start out doing and not even paying attention to the leaderboard. And I'm serious. I didn't even pay attention because it was spring break, and And I was just doing like 10,000. Oh, wow, I hit 20,000 steps. That's I gotta be doing great. So we get back to school and I realize I'm not even in the top 20. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I look on there and there's people doing like big time steps per day. So I'm like, all right, well, we're going to get serious here. So I start moving my way up the leaderboard. Anyway, and I got to the point where I just started doing a minimum. I set myself to do a minimum of 40,000 steps per day, which I don't know how many miles that is. I don't know if that's, is that like 18, 19, 20 miles a day? I don't know.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, roughly, give or take, right? Depending on the person. So anyway, so the point is, I start moving my way up the leaderboard and I'm like, okay, well, some people that were starting out doing like 50,000 and 40,000 are starting to drop down because it takes a toll on your body after a while. So I just kept going. And no matter what, I made sure I got in a minimum of 40,000 steps, and that's for the last 5 weeks of this thing every day, so once again, my wonderful wife and family are patient with me with my hobby that I have, and they allowed me to go out, and I would just go out at night after the day, and I kept walking around my neighborhood. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy, but I would go out sometimes 2-3 hours at night, just keep getting steps. And I realized, here's the thing that was kind of interesting, was that I got less steps when I ran, covering more distance. So I had to walk, and I figured out a pace where I was going a steady walk, but where I got the most bang for my buck, where I was getting the most steps for the amount of time I was out. And it had to do with walking. It was more beneficial. So I was walking there, and then even like, some nights I stayed in, and I'm not kidding you, one night I stayed in, it's not an exaggeration, I walked around my house for the evening, and I probably walked about 7 miles just inside my house.
Oh my gosh.
Up and down the stairs, through each room. And then I just kept going and going and going and going. So that's the thing, is that my steps were always forward progress. I didn't have a treadmill at the time. I'm lucky I have one now. But I didn't have a treadmill at the time. So I just kept walking, and then getting in my steps. So
and then you ended up, how many did you get?
In the 6 weeks, I think 1.7 million, I think it was total, something ridiculous like that. I made sure, because I was really paranoid, I really made sure that I won by 100,000 steps, because I was waiting for, it ended at midnight on a Sunday night. And I got a membership at one of those 24-hour gyms. Mm-hmm. I remember, because I'm like, okay, if I get tired of walking around, I could go, to the treadmill at this 24-hour gym, Anytime Fitness, and like I could walk there. So I was, that Sunday night, it's about 11 o'clock. I'm there at Anytime Fitness, just walking on the treadmill, and getting in some steps there. Then I came home and I was walking more, and I was watching the leaderboard, making sure nobody was coming close, because I wanted to make sure that somebody wasn't going to bust out like 100,000 steps. I made sure I did 70,000 steps in that last day. And then I leading the weekend up to it, I was that's why I said, this may turn into like a 24 to 48 hour where we're just going, walking nonstop to make sure.
That's where I remember I was helping you with it. Me and a couple of our buddies, we were out walking, just hiking around, running, hiking around. And there was a lady that was just, she just kept bursting your bubble, man. Every morning you'd wake up and then she was just ahead of you. And you were starting to get frustrated about it. And I could see it in your eyes whenever we were running. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And you just simply, you didn't even look at me. You just kept looking forward, and you said, she better be willing to go for 48 hours straight. At the end of this,
on the District 202 steps.
It's like, it's probably like a teacher's aide or like a math teacher or something like that.
He was relentless.
She better be willing to go for 48 hours straight.
Goodness.
And that's what we were talking about. I'm like, I was going to open up the track at South and spend the whole weekend there and just camp out. We were talking about if that's what was necessary. That's what we were going to do.
This lady's pretty next level, man. I'm wondering who it is. I mean, That's a lot of steps.
She was getting after it, man. She was definitely getting after it. So what do you like, how do you manage all of this? Like to the average person, actually something I kind of wanted to bring up was somebody that we all three look up to is David Goggins. Okay.
Yeah.
We like listening to David Goggins and all these things. And I by no means am trying to put down David Goggins at all. Okay. Because he seems like a guy that you really don't want to make mad. I wouldn't want to wrestle him or fight him or anything like that. But this is all I got to say. Okay. You are a legend to me and my friends, basically. And I don't think it's because you just do these extraordinary things, pushing your body, and you're a mental savage and all these things. There's a lot of mental savages out there, and David Goggins is one of them. Okay. But you have a full-time job. You're a cross-country coach. You're a track coach. You have a wife and 2 kids. You have a house to take care of. You're doing all this stuff with all those things. You are the common man that is doing these things. And you are like a beacon of hope for somebody who looks up to somebody like David Goggins and is like, man, how does he's so tough. He's so tough. Yeah, he is so tough. But in my mind, you're tougher. You're doing the things that a common everyday man is doing. And then you're going on over the top and you're doing these things. And I don't think it's not like who's tougher than who and blah, blah, blah. But what I'm saying is you're showing that you want to finish an Ironman, do it. You got a job, so do I. You got family, so do I. You got responsibilities around the house, so do I. How do you find the time in the day, and what do you say to the person that's like, well, yeah, I like the things that David Goggins says, but I'll never be able to do anything like that. Never be able to push myself to that level. I don't have enough time to train for a marathon. I don't have enough time to train for a marathon. How could I train for 100-mile race? That's what the question I get all the time is, how are you going to train for that? You don't have any time. So what do you say to those people?
Well, first off, you got to make sure, like in my situation, that you have a supportive family, and that's where I'm extremely, extremely lucky that my wife, Jane, jumps on board with this stuff. And, she has done an Ironman herself. She's ran herself. Her big thing growing up was soccer, so she has that competitiveness, is just amazing. But she understands. That's the key thing. My 2 kids, they really don't have a choice. Just they don't know any different, and that's the key thing is they don't know any different.
Right.
It's just the way we live. Just like my and this sounds a little goofy, but my son is in 3rd grade. My daughter's in 1st grade. They went out and did a 2-mile run with us the other day. And they did a 4-mile hike, and and they do that nonstop because they don't understand that. They do it. Just realize that when we go out for a run, we run. They don't walk. So that's just what they have programmed in their head, and we make it fun. But beyond that, you need to have that culture around you. You need to have that support unit, and I do. My wife is awesome. Finding time in the day, you have to make time. You have to schedule it in. And if that means like we've talked before, and we've even done before, if that means getting up at 4 a.m. and getting out and getting after it, that's fine. If that means you got to go do your run at 9 o'clock at night, you go do it, Mm-hmm. But my schedule is not as crazy as some would think, because all those other things happen in life. And then I get my running, and luckily, with my profession too, I coach cross country. I work with the distance runners, and then at the same time in track. Even though I'm the head coach, I work with the distance runners. So I get I'm very lucky in that sense. I get to run with those guys, and those guys motivate me, just like you do, and so it's about who you surround yourself with. I surround myself with that culture of humans that do what I do, and have a positive mental attitude that goes into it, because that's the foundation of it all.
Right. Yeah. I remember distinctly whenever I was training for my first ultra, you just being like, all right, yeah, let's meet at Waterfall Glen in the morning. And I was like, okay, yeah, what time? And you were like, 3:30, 3:30, okay. And I was like, no, I said in the morning. Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean 3:30 a.m. in the morning. I was like, gosh, dang it, man. So that means I got to wake up at 3 to drive the half an hour over to Waterfall Glen. I was like, whew, this is a different, type of human being that I'm dealing with here. But, people do it, and people, you have to find, you have to I always tell my athletes, there is time that you can mine out of every single day. You can mine time out of every day, and you can find it. There's little pieces here and there and here and there, and if you string them all together, then it creates a substantial amount of time. And that's one thing that drives me up the wall, is whenever people come at me with, I don't have enough time. That drives me nuts, and that might be why I'm stressed out a lot, because I don't give myself that option, that scapegoat of, I don't have any time. I don't have any time. If I really want to do something, I can mine a little bit of time out of this part of my day, and then I can combine it with a little bit of time out of this part of my day. And then all of a sudden, I've got a half an hour, or I've got an hour, and that's, I guess it just goes into, just like what kind of attitude, and at the end of the day, how bad you want it. Because if you just kind of want something, if you just kind of want it a little bit, you're not going to be willing to get up at 3:30, if you just kind of want it. So I think you got to find those things that you're willing to, you have to have some sort of motivation for it as well. So Josh, you got to you put in pretty long runs.
Yeah.
And so these runs are not like 15-minute runs.
I keep referencing this guy, Brad, who we, hope to have on here, but he told me, he always just said miles, just get miles. And I guess I thought of it as vault reps, right? Relating it back to pole vault. We always talk in reps. We need hundreds of more reps. And it's like, the only way I have found that I'm getting significantly better at distance running, knocking 15, 20 minutes, half hour off marathon times, is by just getting an enormous amount of miles. And enormous for me is, 30, 40, 50, 60 mile weeks, and week after week after week. And next thing you know, you look and you're like, hey, my heart rate was only 150 on this run, and it's normally 170. Or, I ran that same route, 2 months ago at 9-minute pace. Now it's at 7-minute pace, and I didn't even exert any more energy. Yeah. One question I have for you, Coach Crowe, is like, I don't understand the segue into training for this 100. And I don't know how much time we have. We're getting close in terms of time limit, but I just wonder, I'm running 6, 7, 8 mile runs, 4, 5, 6 times a week. I know you see it on Strava, and it's, I'm trying to figure out if I should be doing 2, 3, 4 mile runs a couple days a week, and then blowing it out with like, these 20, 25, 30 mile runs on Saturdays or Sundays. What would you suggest for somebody who in 5.5, 6 months has a 100 miler that they are going to do everything in their power to finish?
First off, listen to your body.
Yeah.
Plan it out ahead of time with what you can do. But that's the key thing, is that it's what you have time to do and what you can fit in. Mm-hmm. Also slow down. If you're going to do a 100 miler, you got to think about the pace you're going to be hitting at. Yeah. So you're going to have those days where you're going at a tempo pace, you're getting your heart rate up, but you almost have to practice running slow and being patient. I think get in what you can get in during the week. Don't freak out if you don't get in a 10 miler, 8 miler. If maybe one day you only get in 4 or 5 miles, you're getting out, you're still getting the run in. The key thing is, once you get to your long run on the weekends, okay, when you could fit in your long run, and that's where you may have to get up early in the morning. I would say more focused time on your feet, you know, and unless you intend on going out and running the entire 100 miles, you know, you got to incorporate some slow jogging. You got to incorporate some power hiking, as we like to call it, and slowing it down. And instead of focusing maybe, and this is just my opinion, this is not saying it's right. Instead of just focusing on hitting 30 miles, maybe you're just shooting for 4 hours or 5 hours on your feet moving forward, because that's how race day is going to eventually become. Yep. So you want to make it practical to that. And then you start training your mind as well. And I think that's where really with the 100 miler, it truly is more mental than anything else, you know, as far as to that finish line.
That's super helpful and correlates the same with what Jake has told me and Brad and any of the other people I've talked about. It's this time on the feet. And it's funny because I have the Afton trail run that's still as of now happening. But they did give a preliminary email that's like, hey, you know, it's July 4th. Like, come on, guys, probably not going to happen. But as of now, we're still good. And I'm running a 25K section of that. And I want to take top 25. Typically, there's 400 or 500 people that sign up. So I have to be at a 7:30 pace with about 3,500 feet of elevation gain. So that's why I'm in this weird hybrid mode where it's like, I want to have that in my back pocket. If they say, hey, let's just do this. I want to show up at the start line and be able to run 7:30, 8-minute paces uphill. But what's in the back of my mind is I keep saying, slow down. Just who cares about your GPS watch? Start a timer, you know, go out there and be out there for 4, 5, 6 hours. Walk, stop, you know, fill up your water bottle, do whatever you got to do. That's what it seems like, the theme I got to kind of jump into.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to slow down, to be honest with you, because I don't know. It's hard. And like I said, it's hard to mine 5 hours out of your day too, especially when you got, you know, work and family and stuff like that. Well, before we wrap up, what's the future looking like? What goals do you have? I guess specific to, you know, what races interest you? What, you know, like we've talked about a couple things, a couple races, but what interests you to the point to where you're like, hey, I want to put this on my radar and I want to, you know, I want to go for this. What interests you?
Well, as you know, I've been trying to get into the Western States 100. This year I got on the wait list. So I was 23rd on the wait list. Race is obviously in June and it got canceled. So they forwarded everything over to next year. So I'm on the wait list for next year. But I've been trying to get into that for 5 years. That's where I've been doing the 100 milers consecutively. Their qualifying races, make sure I do one of their qualifying races. So that's on my radar. You know, obviously the goal is to get to that start line and then obviously finish that race. So that's always what I'm shooting for. Other things out there, you know, I don't know that. I've been watching a couple of documentaries on 200-mile races.
Oh gosh, I thought you were going to say something different than that 200-mile race. Gosh dang, man. I mean, yeah, that's legit. What was the one though that you were going to say? I think you were going to say right after that 200-mile race, and then was there one more? There's
the Moab 240, Tahoe 200. You know, that whole series, the Bigfoot 200 out there. I'm not saying I'm doing them. Don't put me down for that yet. But I'm just saying, intriguing. You're asking me what's interest. Well, that's interest because that's like that next step. But I just want to get in the Western States and take on one of those big races out west with the mountains.
Yeah, that was disappointing, man. That was because it was like you were pretty much, you weren't a shoe-in for sure, but there was I don't know, maybe at least a 50-50 shot of you being able to run Western States this year. And like you said, that's what you've been working for the past 5 years. For people who don't know about Western States, can you explain why it's important that you have run these consecutive 100-milers?
Yeah, you have to run a qualifying race every year. So you literally have to finish one of their qualifying races, which is mostly a 90% of the time 100-mile race. It's one that they approve of. You finish it, under the time limit that's allowed. And then it puts you back in the lottery. And then you get in the lottery in December, and you got thousands of names in there, and they only pick 369 people to run the race. So obviously there's other people that have different ways to get in as far as winning races throughout the country and the world. But then there's lottery. That's what I am. I'm in the lottery, and I'm like about one of just a couple hundred people that are allowed to get in through the lottery, so, but you got to do the qualifying here. So I got put on the wait list this year, 23rd. In the past years, 23rd has gotten in the race. So I was pretty excited about that. But now I just got to wait another year. So it's okay.
It is what it is. And then this another year of the Indiana Trail 100 that we signed up for, that'll give you more lottery balls in the lottery. Right?
Yeah, in the future. If I don't get in next year through the wait list, then that'll put me back in the lottery for another year. So yeah, every year you get more tickets, lottery tickets in the literally a big bin where they spin it and they have a live lottery pick and
drawing.
Lottery drawing,
crazy.
right? Yeah, but if you get a chance to look at their website, because it's a very historical race out through the Sahara Nevada mountains. There's like 18,000 feet of elevation going up, and then like 22,000 feet going down. So it's pretty cool race.
Goodness.
They consider that kind of the Super Bowl of ultra marathon running, right?
Yeah.
And
So
then,
I just wanted to.
Last one before we go, you and I have talked about what's the race out in Death Valley?
Oh yeah, Badwater 135.
Badwater, yeah, that was the one that you had kind of seriously started to consider looking into as well. Like, there's a kind of crazy qualifying process though for that, isn't there?
You literally apply like you're filling out an application, and then they only take 100 runners from around the world. And last year I applied, and I got turned down. But basically, actually the race director his name is Chris. I think it's Kleiman. It might be his last name, but was kind enough to respond to my email. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. It's because I read actually I'm using it as a I shouldn't have my microphone sitting on it. Can't Hurt Me. David Goggins.
Yeah. Yes.
I just remember hearing Goggins' voice a million times over. Costner didn't let me in the race. Made me feel the pain after I didn't get in or whatever. Sorry, go for it.
No, it's cool. No, thank you for correcting me. I hate when I mispronounce somebody's name. But the race director was kind enough to email me back right away, because I said,
wow.
What do I need to do? And he's like, well, you need to do more challenging races. Western States would be one of those. You need to come out here and experience Death Valley. So I highly recommend you coming out here and volunteering at the race and helping out with somebody's crew, or just helping out at an aid station and experiencing what the environment's like. Because I can't comprehend that. I've driven through Death Valley one time, and that was it. And then he also said that, we have other races around North America. If you enter one of our other races and get in and finish that, he goes, that's another way that'll improve your chances of getting in the race. So basically, you just need to have an awesome resume. So it's about stepping up the resume and then hopefully getting in that race someday. That would be really, really cool.
It's pretty reasonable for him to respond like that. I know through David Goggins' book, he kind of had the same response. He's like, hey, you finished, a 24-hour race, or you finished 101 miles in a 24-hour race, but the whole point of a 24-hour race is to run the whole 24 hours. And you didn't. You ran 17 hours. But if you would have kept running, maybe that would have added to your resume. So at this point, he didn't have the credentials to be able to get into that race. And I think he ended up going out and running a Boston qualifier or something that bumped him, enough to get into the race. So
for sure. All right, Coach, is there anything else that you want to let the people know?
No, but I just want to. No, but I just want to thank you guys for having me on. I mean, it's truly an honor, because you guys talk about me, but honestly, it's just the other way around. Like Josh, like I said, I follow your career and what you're doing now, and it's just amazing. And I wish you nothing but the best. No problem, buddy. And same thing with Jake. You know, I don't have enough time to talk about all the great things that he's done. So like I said, just to be here with you guys and having you guys talk to me is truly humbling and an honor. And then the last thing is I really cannot wait until October when the three of us get to toe the line together, you know, and tackle on the Indiana Trail 100, which Josh, it's going to be your first time out there, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just here's the best thing about ultras. And you'll experience it that day, is the people that you're surrounded with, you know, and you talk about surrounding yourself with the right people and good people and people with the same attitude, the positive mental attitude, the volunteers, the race director, so many people out there just give, you know, and that's what I love about doing ultras, is that you're around people that just give back and give, you know, to help other people out and accomplish their goals. And you're really going to experience something special that day being around that. You know, and you get that in other sports. Like you see that pole vaulting, such a tight group that you know, fantastic. You know, so this is going to be just, you know, another aspect of that in a different way. And that's what you're really going to get to enjoy. And I'm looking forward to experiencing that with you guys. It's really going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be cool to see you guys accomplish your goals that day. So I can't wait to see that and be a part of it.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, we're pumped about it. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. Once again, it's an honor. You are just an incredible inspiration to us. And I know for sure that there are going to be people out there that are going to be highly inspired by your stories today and by the things that you talk about and just the way that you are. And for anybody who's curious, this is no act. This is him every day. He is what he says he is, or what he's presented today on this podcast. He is that person every single day. And it's just an incredible person. We're lucky to have you in our lives. And thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. This is the One More Jump podcast, and we signing off.